Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Coffee on the Couch. Coffee Ring seems like the perfect name. I thought it would be a good time to kind of check in with you guys, talk a little bit about what's going on my end, and just have one of those glorious kickback Sundays where we can just grab a cup of coffee, go sit on a comfy couch, and have a great conversation. Hello. Hey, it's B. I thought about this segment and thought it might be interesting to talk to you a little bit about what's happened so far, maybe what's happening for the past couple of weeks around the world, in my life. And right now, I have a hot cup of coffee in my hand, getting ready to dive in. So we're actually having coffee together. How do you take your coffee? So for me, it really depends on my mood. So during the week, I'm pretty easy. Just a hot cup of coffee, black, nothing fussy. I very rarely put any sort of sweetener in it. But sometimes on the weekend, you're in the chill mode. You kind of want to relax, treat yourself, maybe even a little bit. So I will have a little bit of non-dairy alternative and a little bit of sweetener. How do you take your coffee? Maybe this would be a good time to press pause, go pour yourself a cup of coffee or a mimosa or a cup of tea, whatever it is you fancy on a Sunday afternoon, and come back and press play. And we'll get into some great conversations. It's always nice to kick back and enjoy whatever it is you drink. If I think back to the past, what has it been, 5 weeks of podcasts, I started this as wanting to have a weekly podcast. The holidays kind of got in the mix and it didn't really work out to be every week. I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a break over Christmas, really enjoy Christmas. And there's a lot of clutter around Christmas time, so I'm sure you guys were doing the same. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to any of the podcasts that we have launched in the last 5 weeks, maybe take the time to check it out. We've had some great conversations with a lot of really deep thinking, thought-provoking conversations of some great people that have had some really simple experiences like we all have. But the way that they put it all together and make it make sense, I think is really unique to our conversations. So one of the things that I really wanted to do when I had this podcast was to, one, have great conversation, two, find some sort of way that we can all learn from each other and really kind of have that connection. And when I say connection, I mean, kind of enhancing our relationships, because what I've realized is our relationships in life are really everything. If I think back to, let's say, the last couple of weeks, I have had some really good conversations about relationships. Now, relationships are very, very complex things. But what I've realized is that we need these relationships. I know that sounds silly to say, but if I take you back to maybe growing up and being a teenager in my early 20s, I really had the attitude that I could do everything on my own. That, I didn't need anybody or anything. I was ready to take on the world. But, that was a long time ago. And we learn and we grow. And now I realize how rewarding life is with great relationships. And to be honest, they don't all have to be great relationships, because relationships are very complex. They can be good at times and not good at times. And maneuvering through those relationships and learning how to do things better, I think, is a challenge for everyone. I have a good friend of mine, and we were having a conversation not too long ago about something that she's going through in her life and really not feeling the support of some people that have been in her life for a very long time. I think we've all had those moments in life when we reach for support of people that we think know us best, and we don't always get the response that we were looking for. I think in those cases, it's important to remember that everyone has their opinion and everyone's entitled to their opinion. But at the end of the day, how we feed into that and what we decide to take on is really our responsibility. And I think, everything is fixable. And sometimes taking time to assess a situation with a fresh pair of lenses. Maybe it's taking some time away from that relationship, or maybe it's, not thinking about it at all and just giving yourself some time. I think that's where you see some sort of development in a positive direction. So speaking of relationships, I think for the season of Coffee on the Couch, it would be great to do a second season, but let's just stay where we're at for now. The first season, I really wanted to add a little bit more of a personal touch. And I know these have been great conversations with people that I know, and a lot of them have been friends. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper and get into some relationships that are some of the most important relationships to me, and some of the most challenging relationships, to be honest. But as relationships go, the ebb and flow of things, every relationship has a certain amount of ebb and flow in it. In fact, all relationships, whether it's friends or partners or parents or siblings or work colleagues, there is a certain amount of ebb and flow, I think. So I wonder, what have been your most challenging relationships? I think we can all think back, probably not even that far. We know that there are some relationships out there that are a little bit more difficult than others. That doesn't make them bad relationships. In fact, I think that the ones that are the most challenging are the ones that are meant to teach us the most, and the ones that you pay attention to the most. It really wouldn't matter as much if we had difficult relationships with strangers. They don't really mean too much. But it's normally, I think, and very naturally, the people that we're closest to. So if you think back, what has it been for you? Have you struggled with a sibling or a parent or a friend? And what about even the relationship that you have with yourself? It's got to be the most important relationship you'll ever have. I'm starting to learn this, by the way. So if you're not there yet, maybe you will be. That is a challenging one for me. I'm always up and down with the way that I look at things, the way that I look at things about myself, I think. I don't know if that's more of a female thing or a mom thing or a type A thing, or maybe it's just a me thing. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that struggle with the same. And things are really tough right now for a lot of people. There's a good saying that I've been using recently, and it's okay to not be okay. I think there's a lot to be learned on being able to maneuver through the most difficult relationships. So one of the podcasts that I'm working on now is a podcast that I get to do with my dad. And my dad and I have had a little bit of an ebb and flow in our relationship for a long time. But I think what I've realized very recently, maybe in the last few years, I've had a new sense of perspective on who he is, maybe taking some time apart, because 4 years ago, I moved from the Bahamas to London. And when you make those giant leaps, you don't really get to go home as often as you would like. But to be honest, I think taking a step back for me, I was able to see some things that maybe I wasn't seeing to begin with. My dad and I have had, up and down relationship, but I think now more than ever, I just get it. I don't know if you can understand what I mean by just getting it, but I think removing yourself from a situation sometimes and giving time to time and letting things kind of, sit better. You learn some things about yourself through, big movements in life. And I think that maybe sometimes we can look back on some challenging moments and realize how we wish we would have handled certain things a little bit different. So my dad is actually on my podcast. It took me a while, let's be honest, to convince him to actually sit down and be videotaped and recorded. I could tell that he was a little excited, maybe even a little bit nervous. It's hard to be recorded. And it was quite funny to hear him go back and forth about not wanting my mom to be eavesdropping on the conversation. But of course, she totally did. Surprisingly, I mean, I don't know if it was such a surprise, to be honest. I was hoping that there would be things that surprised me, and there were quite a few surprises. We got talking about what it was like growing up in the 50s, not too long after the Second World War, how he grew up. We talked about his college life, and I got to see a little bit of a different side. So I am actually working on that one right now, editing that away, and obviously it's definitely an important one for me. So I'm trying to make it as personal and as meaningful as possible. So it's taking me a little bit longer than expected. I wanted to actually end my season with a podcast with him. It's great to even have somebody from a different generation give you a little bit of perspective on the way that they see life. I think now more than ever, one of the lessons that I'm constantly remembering is the fact that we all have different ways of looking at situations, and we're made up of so much more than just experiences. We're made up of, genetics even, where we, were born in the world, the year that we were born, what technology even I think affects our character in a way. I think that when I listened back to our conversation, the one specifically with my dad, I could see that there were a lot of beautiful simplicities that existed when he was growing up that unfortunately we don't have now. Raising two kids in 2020, now 2021, is definitely not easy. I think it kind of makes me, when I was going down memory lane with him, it makes me appreciate the simple things in life, and just climbing a tree, for example, or having to use your imagination to make up a game. I think that generation and older generations before all of this technology and social media, I think they were actually happier. There wasn't this pressure, I think, that exists today. I don't know. What do you think? Do you remember playing some games when you were growing up that forced you to use your imagination? I think there are a couple of games that stand out for me, like Jacks. I loved playing Jacks. The little round ball and having to bounce the ball and be quick enough to pick up one jack and then two jacks and then three jacks and then four. I can't even remember how many they went up to, but that was definitely a favorite of mine. And then just singing songs and skipping rope. It's funny because I've tried to show my kids how to skip rope, and they do it, but they're so out of their comfort zone. This conversation reminds me of a conversation that I was having with Sarah on my first ever podcast, episode 1 of Coffee on the Couch. And we were talking about technology and just the simple things like a phone. When we were growing up, we didn't have mobile phones. We had the round ones where you had to, I can't even remember the name of that phone, where you had to kind of put your fingers in the holes and, turn it all the way to dial a number. So nothing was digital. And we were having a chuckle because we think that our kids probably would never be able to figure out how to use it because everything is so easy. I can imagine showing my kids one of those phones and getting a big laugh out of the fact that they probably wouldn't even realize how to use it. That's it, going back to a simpler time where we didn't have all of the things that we have now that make our life and enrich our life. It is enriching to have so much technology. I mean, we're connecting in different ways. It seems like even though it was so simple and so beautiful, and it just seemed like a little less anxiety, a little less, hustle and bustle back then. But if you think about the way that our lives are, I don't know if we'd be able to accomplish the things that we can now because everything's so easy. There are a couple of things that technology-wise I couldn't live without. I don't think I can remember a life without a smartphone. Always connected. What about you? Are you smartphone obsessed? Obsessed with your gadgets? Or do you just kind of have it as a necessary evil? I actually wish I was more the latter group because I am constantly connected. It's almost like an obsession. And it's hard for me to also speak reason to my children when, they always see me on the phone too. That's a challenge that I have. I don't know if it's the same for you guys that have kids, but yeah. How do we teach our kids to not be obsessed with their electronics if we ourselves are constantly connected? I think it would take a while to get used to, but it may be something worth doing and taking a hiatus from technology for a while. As uncomfortable as that may seem, even thinking about it, it kind of makes me uncomfortable. No, it definitely makes me uncomfortable. I'm already getting quite anxious. It's so awful. I know it is. I'm just going to call myself out. If you have any advice, please let me know. So, how's that coffee? Or mimosa? What are you drinking? Let me know. One of the questions that I think is a big joke that I frequently get asked, because I think everybody thinks it's a big joke now, is when you're heading on into your weekend on a Friday afternoon, everyone's kind of like, oh, so what do you have planned for the weekend? Do you ever get those? You chuckle and laugh, but, once, twice, three times, you've kind of had enough of that question because really, honestly, we're just going from the couch to the kitchen, to the bedroom, to the shower. If we're lucky, we'll get out once a day or every other day to go for a walk or a run. It's kind of odd. Maybe we need to find new ways to occupy ourselves. And speaking of new ways to occupy ourselves, I've never really been much of a TV watcher. I do like TV. It's hard for me to even say that because I do like TV, but then I don't make it a priority because I have other things to be doing that, I don't really sit down and watch TV. In fact, when the TV goes on, oh my gosh, I'm going to out myself and my age. The TV goes on and for sure within 5 minutes, unless it's absolutely riveting, I'm mostly asleep. It's like ambient TV. Every TV show for me is like ambient TV, except for a couple. So I just heard something on the radio literally 2 days ago that if you haven't seen it yet, you probably should put this on your watch list. But Bridgerton is the #1 most watched ever series on Netflix with, I think, 85 million viewers. Oh my goodness. Incredible. Let's talk about it because was it brilliant? I don't know. It was cheeky. It was fun. The costumes are amazing. The visuals are beautiful. The characters are really, you get a chuckle out of them. Some characters like that in our own lives. The lead male character, beautiful. The lead female character, she's also beautiful. It's just kind of like cookie cutter, but for whatever reason, this is like a phenomenon there. It's just, you cannot stop watching it. I think it's because there's a big buildup. Like everyone's trying to figure out the same question. Nobody knows what's going on. I don't want to, if you've not watched it, I'm not going to give too much detail, but you should watch it. 85 million viewers. That's pretty incredible. And you may not know this or you may know it, but Shonda Rhimes, I think, is one of the producers on the show. So, of course, she knows what she's doing. So that's it, folks. That's all I've got for a Sunday afternoon. My coffee cup is now officially empty. I hope you've enjoyed whatever it is you've been drinking today. and the space in which you're sitting. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of your Sunday and get into some other great conversations, or not, or just have a nice warm bath, read a book, sit outside and breathe in the beautiful air. It's just as simple as that. It's been great having coffee with you. I'd love to know what you've got up for the rest of the day and what your week is about to look like. Send me an email. Ask me a question. It would be great to hear from you. You can reach me at hello@coffeeonthecouch.co.uk. This has been an episode of Coffee on the Couch. Edited and produced by 50 Freestyle. If you'd like to be on the show, please email me at hello@coffeeonthecouch.co.uk. This is Bianca Carter. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.